Hey, Deserver listeners, I saved up all of your emails regarding the trial, and I thought I would read them all, the good ones, the bad ones, the critical ones, the other ones. And so let's get into it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and let's read an email. Anonymous patron says, I listened to you for years, and never before have I seen you do something that has hurt or even made me angry at you, but this has. I am not wanting you reported to the authorities, but I truly want the licensing boards to have guidelines for clinicians commenting on trials on social media. You have crossed lines on this commentary that I cannot reconcile my feelings for you as a listener. You fell for so much propaganda, and I did not take you for someone like that. Well, I guess thanks for that. Truly, that you think of me as someone that wouldn't fall for propaganda. But you're saying I did fall for propaganda. You keep saying untruths in your commentary. That is not okay. Your last episode admits you do not advocate for victims. You are causing so much damage, and I truly think under these circumstances, your narcissism is showing. There we go. Anonymous patron, I hear you. I do. It hurt you, and it hurt others. And I did not want to do that. And I'm sorry, truly. I was trying. I failed, but I was trying, truly. But I'll tell you, I mean, every negative comment, I don't discount them. If anything, I take it too seriously. When I talk to other content providers, they're like, you take it too seriously. You just got to blow them off. Like, tell them to go to hell or something. I'm just like, I don't know. And so, yeah. So again, I'm sorry you were one of those people, and thanks for reaching out and telling me. Hasina, she says, you have helped me to be more empathetic and less reactive with people. I identify with your description of persons with borderline personality disorder, but I don't know if I have it. I wanted to know if you had a list of trusted clinicians who specialize in borderline personality disorder. Secondly, in the analogy you gave about borderline personality disorder persons looking for parents in the mall, with therapy, will it ever get to the point where you feel like you have found that parent, or will you always have the pain and learn how to manage that pain? End of question. Yeah, so list I don't have, and I apologize for that. It would be nearly impossible for me to have that list. And also, it's a problem in our industry that it's hard to find a therapist. You know, people will say, I can't seem to find a therapist that has openings in my community. And often it just means that the people who do have availability, they just don't advertise it well enough because there's no central database. So it's a huge problem. And in addition to that, a lot of people will claim that they can treat borderline and assess it. And in my estimation, they're not competent. So how do you even know as a consumer or as a client where you should go? It's hard. So I always say, you know, go to 5 therapists and pick the best one and try that person out for 5 sessions. If that works, then great, give it another 5. If it doesn't, skip town, do another 5. It's hard, but it's worth it. You know, people are like, really? Like, that's so time consuming. Finding a good therapist, one that you really are helped by, particularly if you think you have borderline, it's, you know, that person is worth their weight in gold. And so if it takes 2 years, 5 years to find that person, it's worth it. Believe me, because you can benefit so greatly from the right therapy. So many benefits can happen, and you deserve that. So you just got to plug away at it, which I apologize on behalf of my industry that we suck so bad at connecting you with the right person. It's really awful. And with a lot of people being untrained and bad at it to begin with. So anyway, but you also ask, you know, about that metaphor that I gave, that for people with abandonment trauma like borderline, the feeling that they constantly have throughout their entire life is that they've been abandoned at the mall and they're looking for their parents, and they feel this way their entire life. That doesn't encapsulate everything about borderline, but it is a metaphor. And when I randomly said that in that reaction video a few weeks ago, I remember thinking, ooh, I should hold on to that one. Like, I like that, because a lot of us have had that experience, or at least we could imagine how that would feel. I had that happen to me when I was a kid. And I can still remember it, you know, because my mom would take me to the store or the mall or something. And I always liked to do other things. Like I would, when we were at a department store or a clothing store, like Nordstrom or something, I liked to get behind the clothes and hide and sit there. It felt like I was in this secret fort. And of course, there would be times when my mom would just lose me and think, well, maybe he left the store, and she would walk out, or I would just lose track of her and I would go, oh, where's my, and I'd emerge and where's mom? And it's terrifying, right? But luckily for me, I found my mom, or my mom found me. And so I didn't have that. And plus, I wasn't abandoned in general by anyone in my life growing up. My parents are still married. They're coming up on their 60th wedding anniversary. And my mom was almost always home, and eventually she worked from home. And then my dad came home at 5 o'clock every day. He worked at Boeing, and neither of my parents used any kind of substances or drank. They never drank alcohol. They didn't even swear. So my family was very goody two shoes. My older siblings were great. My younger sibling is everyone. I don't know. I mean, there were problems, but nothing that would produce any kind of abandonment trauma. But anyway, I thought about that metaphor. I'm like, oh, it's kind of a good one. I should use that again, because I think that at least it resonates with me. Anyway, but then you ask, can it end? Yes, absolutely. Specialized therapy that creates corrective experiences where your therapist does not abandon you, even though you might even test them at times, and they show that they care. This is where relational expert borderline therapy comes into play. You have to don't go to a CBT person. They're great, but they're not great at this, okay? You want to go to someone who specializes in relational therapy, psychodynamic therapy. Depends. It could be humanistic, depending. It's hard to know what language you should be looking for, but anyway, the relationship that lasts for 5 to 10 years maybe is what's necessary to right the wrongs and to relearn something else that you learned differently when you were a child. And it has to be tested a lot. You have to really learn that this therapist, although I'm paying them or someone's paying them, they actually truly care about me. And of course, that's a very hard thing to accept. It's also a very hard thing to convey. It takes a long time. And through that, you learn, oh, I am lovable. I can trust some people. And then you generalize that to the outside world, and then you have corrective experiences in the outside world. So that's how it works. You don't have to go to therapy to have that initial corrective experience. You could have it with anyone, but a specialist is trained and wise in how to manage the back and forth and the triggers and the testing and that kind of thing. Because if you just have a partner or a friend, then it's possible that in the triggering that happens, you inadvertently hurt their feelings enough such that they actually do abandon you again. And a therapist is trained, an expert knows not to abandon you. For example, I will have borderline clients that will test me in ways like they'll just full on attack me. They'll just go after me. Honestly, the way that I feel when some of these emails are coming out, I'm not saying these people have borderline, of course, but it's a similar feeling in my chest, of just like, what's happening right now? And it's scary. It's one thing to be criticized, another thing to have that kind of getting under your skin. It really affects you. And in those moments, I am trained, and I've been around the block enough times that I know that, they're not going to feel this way always. They're feeling this way now, and I value that. But I am now being put to the test. And if I pass this test and I stay in contact, I don't just distance and go like, I actually stay in loving contact. I don't use the word love lightly. A lot of therapists will steer away from that word, but what else do we call it? Human connection or compassion? Love. It's love for human beings. It's not romantic love or sexual love or family love, but love for a client, love for someone that you're taking care of. And so I have that openness and that contact. There's a part of me that's drawing a little bit of a boundary that's saying, well, they're triggered right now, so don't take it personally. And I pass the test, and they do that over and over and over again, and that they're very good. And the key is I have to stay in contact. I could easily just distance and become kind of like a scientist or a lab coat or something. And it would be very easy for me to do that and protect myself from the attack, right? But that's not corrective. I have to stay in contact. I have to not abandon even in my heart. And because it can be felt by the client. And if I'm going to be helpful, I can't do that. I don't always succeed, but I think that's what I'm striving for. So yeah, through that, you can absolutely heal and absolutely change your personality, change your relationships. It's demonstrated by science. It's one of those evidence-based treatments, by the way, for those of you who know that language. Okay. Anonymous reporter says, "Hello, Dr. Honda. I'm a journalist who happens to be from the Seattle area. I appreciate that in a few of your episodes reacting to the trial, you have offered explanations for why the media hasn't accurately portrayed the trial. The two main reasons I gleaned from you were, one, media outlets rely on clicks and views to make money, and two, they are wary of getting canceled or being seen as against the Me Too movement or against women victims. These are valid reasons." Yeah, just chiming in here. Yeah, that was essentially what I say. You're a good journalist because you nailed it. However, I would like to offer a third reason that I think is the most compelling and most likely. Okay, good. So you're an expert, you're a journalist, you know more than I do. Since 2008, newsrooms have been incredibly short-staffed. And as you surely know, there is also a lot going on in the world right now, from Roe v. Wade being overturned to various climate disasters, the war in Ukraine, the Uvalde shooting, and other mass shootings on the rise, COVID, etc. Please imagine a reporter whose job it is to cover one of the aforementioned topics. Then their editor asks them to put together a piece about Johnny Depp trial and send it to me by tomorrow. With so many other seemingly more important issues going on, that reporter will simply not have time to delve deep into the trial and understand the nuances. Conversely, please imagine a scenario in which a reporter tries to make a case to an editor that they should be allowed 1 week to watch the trial and write an in-depth piece. That reporter will have a very hard time convincing their most likely older male boss that this Hollywood spectacle is worth diverting resources to. So the reasons for the inaccurate and incomplete portrayal of the trial in mainstream media is likely much less nefarious or coordinated, and in truth is probably just a result of there not being enough newsroom resources to dedicate. It's sad to me as a journalist because I can see how much nuance has been missed in that coverage and how this trial would actually be an important moment to focus on domestic violence, personality disorders, mutual abuse, the fact that men can be abuse victims, etc. End of email. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but of course that makes total sense. I knew that issue from the past 20 years, ever since the internet started to really get ramped up in terms of replacing regular old school media, and the pros and cons of that. And one of the major cons is that it has eliminated, to a large extent, the in-depth reporting that we used to benefit greatly from. Right? Like the Watergate scandal was because the way that the media landscape was before is newspapers could pay two reporters, I believe, to really spend months looking into something. And of course, today you couldn't do that, right? For the most part. Now, you could say a podcast could do that, and a lot of podcasts or YouTube channels will do that, right? But overall, I think we've lost an important element of our society, which is in-depth quality journalism, which still exists to some extent, but not the way it did in the past. So I agree. So that's why you're saying in mainstream media there was surface coverage that didn't really coincide with the general opinion of people who were watching the trial in an in-depth way. So yeah, that's interesting. And I guess I was speaking out of my butt a little bit because I don't know these things. So it's good. I'm always glad to hear from a professional. I think what you're saying was that my hypotheses were claiming that the mainstream media was nefarious or coordinated. I don't know if you used those words. To be clear, that's not how I saw it. I saw it more as that because of the lack of funds from the way they used to get money before, they're forced to be click-oriented on the internet. And we also have to define what we mean by mainstream media, right? But anyway, so I'm not saying it's nefarious or coordinated. I'm saying it's reactionary and unfortunate that they have to do that. And also the idea that they're wary of getting canceled, I don't mean that they're nefarious. Like they're like, well, we really want to say this, but we can't because we have to appease to those people who are going to cancel us. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is each individual journalist could have put pen to paper and thought, well, I kind of want to say this, but it's safer to say this other thing. Not that it's coordinated or nefarious. It's just you're just a little scared. And so it's just easier to be like, well, I think this is what the masses are going to not cancel me for. And, but of course, you would know a million times more than I would. So patron Horatio from Switzerland, he says, I'm deeply sorry and upset for all the hatred that the internet has been sending your way. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the insights you provide. Thanks to you, I was able to have a constructive discussion with my wife about a behavior that was triggering me. In the past, I would just get upset and try to tell her that what she was doing was wrong and that she should just not do it. So we would never solve these conflicts because of that. Thanks to the psychological insights you provided in the trial reactions, I was able to realize that what was actually happening was that I was being triggered by my wife's behavior and that it relates to some experiences from my childhood. Once I was able to explain this to my wife, she understood my reactions, and now life is much better for both of us. Concerning the hatred and bullying you have received lately, it seems we have lost the capacity to be in front of people that don't think like us. By the way, I appreciate your capacity to hypothesize either side by saying, let's assume what he or she is saying is true, and then you provide an analysis. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you are biased towards either side, the commentary is useful and insightful. This is what most of the internet does not do. If 2% of the internet could think and reflect in the way you do and have a look at both sides, being aware that all of us are biased, then the internet would be a better place. Psychology in Seattle is a breath of fresh air in the hostile, polarized world that is the internet. Well, thanks a lot, Horatio from Switzerland. That is very kind of you. And it was helpful for me to hear what you think, that I wasn't playing both sides, but I was saying, well, let's assume that this testimony is true. What can we learn about general psychology from that? If we assume that's true, what can we say about general psychology from that? And that's what I tried to do. I mean, along the way, there were times where like, oh, that sounds credible, or I don't know. But I would usually pull out of that space and be like, well, who knows? But let's talk about this. Let's talk about borderline. Let's talk about domestic violence. Let's talk about, personality and attachment and trauma, so that I can hopefully try to make the world a better place, maybe. And so, and you were saying earlier in your email that I was able to provide you a model of evaluating our issues and know that our patterns of conflict are often generated by this rigid approach to these issues. And then you shifted gears and were able to actually say, well, maybe I should think of it more this way. And that's often what I'm doing with my couples, is that the way I think of it as a visualization where there's these things happening at the foundation, but then those things get transformed into these weird defenses, and then the communication comes there. But if I can get people to speak from the foundation, much better things happen. I understand why people don't do it, because when they did that growing up, or maybe as an adult, things went horrible for them because people rejected them. But you got to do that in order for things to go well. So as what you're saying, instead of saying, hey, you did this and that's wrong, you're saying, okay, what you did triggered me in this way as it relates to my childhood. And so I just want you to know that. I mean, it's beautiful that you say that, Horatio, because it's just so wonderful to hear, that you would do that, that you would think to do that, that you would have the compassion to do that, the insight to do that. It's just great that you would trust your partner in that way. Trust yourself, because to do that, you have to say, I have worth, I have value, and my feelings are okay enough to just say them. And I trust that my partner, without me having to direct them and tell them what to do, will actually care about me. So, I think I talked about in another episode that I think it might have been in a patron-only episode, that one of my kind of turning points when I was reacting to the trial. Because as I was reacting to the trial in the beginning, I was just blissfully just making episodes. I'm like, oh, a lot of people are interested, keep going. And then at some point, kind of maybe midway through, I started realizing that the normal criticism ratio was different. And although the likes, so when I, just a little peek behind the curtain, when I look at my stats on YouTube, which I do frequently, there's a percentage that they tell us of every video, but only we can see that. You used to be able to see that, but YouTube took that away from you. I don't know why, but only we can see that now. So when I look at a video, I can tell the ratio of likes to dislikes. And often my videos are somewhere in like the 98% thing. And that 2% gets me. I'm like, so what did they not like? What did I do? The videos were getting similar ratios. Like my trial videos were, they weren't that high, but, say 95 or something, 94, 96, which is pretty close to 97, 98. And I thought, okay, so keep trucking along. But the comment section, and of course the subreddit coalitions against me and stuff, was not reflective of that, right? And you got to figure if someone didn't like what I said, they'd hit the dislike button, right? That'd be the first thing they'd do. So when I started getting these negative comments, I was like, but the like ratio is still good. So clearly most, if not, nearly all of the people are enjoying this. So what's happening? And I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just a vocal minority or something. But then it started to mount over time. And when I saw, I don't know what it was, but it was one of those things I referred to earlier that just really just hit me between the eyes. And I was just like, what is happening? I don't want to do this anymore. And my motivation just deflated. And I would feel myself sitting in front of this camera about to make a reaction video, and I didn't want to do it. I was without any energy. I was scared. And then when I would do a video, I'd be second guessing everything I was saying. And I'd be like, sometimes I'd just be like, I can't do this. And I'd just shut the whole thing and I got to do something else because this isn't working right to me today. I was like this scared puppy or something, just being like, oh God, what's going to happen? But I kept at it. And there's been moments in my podcasting career that's happened over the years. There've been moments, nothing like this, but something in this direction. And so I just figured, it'll blow over, and you just keep at it. You've been doing this for long, just keep going. And then it just got worse and worse. And I don't know exactly when it was, but I do remember this one moment where I was sitting in the kitchen, and my wife, I wasn't sitting, I was standing, we were standing, and I was ranting or venting about the negative comments. And again, to be clear, criticism is fine. Pointing out something I said was stupid or wrong is fine. But the way people would say it, it was just really, or to say that I harmed them, right, is just the worst. And so I'm kind of, I'm mulling all that over, and my wife is listening, and as she always does, she has to endure my yammerings just as much as you do, except you want it. But, and then it just sort of hit me of, why am I so amped up about this? And I just stopped and I said, it just really hurts my feelings. And I started to cry. And the look on her face that she just had this pained look, like empathy face. And she was like, oh, and I could sense that she could really feel it, and she came over and, hugged me and kissed me and said, I don't think she said anything. I think she just did that. And that was everything to me. And that was a big reason as to why I kept, or at least I felt better. And a big reason is to my recovery from that whole thing. And I kept at it. And as I say this, I think like people who hate me that are watching this video right now, they're just like, well, Kirk, you deserve it, so shut up or something. I don't know. All I can say is that I was trying really hard to do good to you and everybody. And I was failing and hurting people. And there was a point when I, was at a low point, and my wife was there for me. And then it would sort of sneak out as I was doing videos. I would say stuff because I couldn't help it. And then a lot of you actually reached out, and some of these emails are a result of that. And so that's when I decided that, okay, I started to feel a lot better. And I'll tell you, like, I don't know if there's something wrong with me. I'll ask my therapist about it, but I needed a lot of that because I felt my energy level about all this stuff, my motivation it was like waning and waxing, and when I'd get attacked, it would start to dip, and then someone would send me a DM or an email or something, and then I would start to pull up, and then it would happen. So I felt weird because I thought, well, couldn't I just accept 2 of these nice emails and have that be enough for me, or 10? But honestly, the frequency, I don't know how many of the nice supportive emails there were, but there were a number, comments and whatnot on the YouTube channel, that I needed all of it. And that doesn't seem healthy or something, but it was all needed and appreciated. And I mean, not only just so I could sleep at night and look at myself in the mirror, but also so that I could continue doing it, Not that it's critical that I do this stuff. It's not like it matters that much, but I do derive a lot of meaning in my life. It is one of the first things I think about in the morning. Anyway, so thank you to all you who gave me the wind beneath my wings. Lily from Minnesota says, thank you for your calm therapist reaction to the trial. I had a 15-year-long friendship with a woman who lied about me, and despite my proof of her lies, she would just deny proof that anyone else could see. Listening to hours of your videos has been incredibly helpful to understand what about the situation made me so unsettled and why the truth just never seemed to go anywhere with her. Yeah, so there's a number of things that I could say about that, but I'll say one thing is that when someone targets us with distortions and lies and semi-delusions, it's rough. It is a rough situation. And we don't know if that was what was happening in the trial, but I do know that happens. And even on the level of just knowing that one person thinks those things about you, but that they're talking to other people, and they might even be going to the authorities or something, and you just think like they seem convinced that those things happened that never happened. And that is highly distressing, particularly to me, but to a lot of people. So I'm glad that at least you have some framework to understand what happened to you. Marcus, he says, I think I might have criticized you too hard, and I would like to apologize if that is the case, because I have found these videos to be very insightful and helpful for my relationship with my girlfriend. I think it might be wise to make a small disclaimer and say that these videos are not to make out the truth, but rather talk about broader subjects. Yeah, well, Marcus, where were you a few months ago? That disclaimer probably would have helped a lot, and I just didn't think to. I don't know. Like when I do stuff, I don't know. I have a pattern of reaction format, and so I just sort of I approach the reaction videos like true reaction videos, because it is a true reaction. I'm watching it for the first time, and I'm talking off the top of my head. So it doesn't often occur to me that something might happen down the line, and I should say something up front. Now I could have recorded something later and put it at the beginning, but it didn't occur to me, and it should have. Tess from Switzerland says, Hi, Dr. Honda. It really hurt me so much to hear today that you get bullied so badly for covering the trial. I wanted to share the email address of the Umbrella Guy on YouTube. He's been into the case for years and also has to deal with Amber Heard supporters. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for still covering the case. You truly make a difference. Best wishes, Tess. Yeah, thanks. I will email. I don't know who that person is, but if they might, I don't know what they could do for me though. Maybe we could just vent together or something. But one of the things that just popped in my head was when I talk to other content providers or just people that I will be talking about the fact that I get some negativity, and I've been, talking about it for 14 years on and off. A lot of people will say, including my co-host Umberto, will say, you get popular enough, there's going to be a percentage of people that are going to hate you. That's just what's going to happen statistically. And intellectually, I totally understand that. Of course, if someone came to me, that's probably what I would say to them. But I think part of it for me, maybe it's my therapist training or just who I am as a human being, is for me to blow off those people, just be able to discount, maybe not discount it, but just not to be affected by it. I think I would have to categorize them as not valuable or something, people that don't matter to me, people's opinion that is not regardable or something. And I don't believe that about anybody. I believe everyone has value and a story to tell and is valid on some level. And I think another thing that I'll hear from people to be like, well, there's crazies on the internet. What are you going to do? And again, I just don't have that perspective about anybody. I believe that everyone has validity. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone is coming from a place that I can understand. Everyone comes from a logical place, even though it's not apparent at first. And so I think my way is preventing me from being able to cope with it, because I think a lot of people are just like, well, you're going to get that. And they just don't take it in. But that's hard for me. Anonymous listener, she says, I was the one that went on Discord the day you went on Legal Bites. That was the YouTube channel that I guested on early on in this whole thing. They reached out to me and said, can you come on one of our live presentation things? And I went on and we talked about abuse and personality disorders. And I believe that was the one I was on with another content provider who said that she actually has borderline. And she's a therapist, and she provided her own opinion, which was that Amber Heard was lying and that she was overreactive because she herself, as a therapist and someone who has borderline and has studied it a lot, she could see all the signs there in Amber Heard, if I remember right. So I don't know, it was an interesting conversation. But so anonymous listener says, I was the one that went on Discord the day you went on Legal Bites and said how upset I was about it. I do not know if this was one of the incidents that made you feel unsafe, but I tried my best then to explain. I did not mean for you to feel unsafe. I just wanted to apologize if my comments caused you pain, and a content creator should always be allowed to post what they believe in. In the past, I wrote to you about an abusive husband, actually. In an email response to me, you were the first to tell me that I deserve to be valued and safe. I am truly grateful for finding your content, and it made such a difference in my life. Well, anonymous listener, I don't remember if it was you or who it was. So I'm going to take a guess and say that the fact that you're apologizing means that you did not make me feel unsafe. I feel very safe in that assumption. So, but thanks anyway. And thanks for pointing out that you have found some value in my content. So that's great. All right, well, let's end it there and pick up later and read the rest of your emails and react to it. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.